Hello, this is Professor Teresa Pelkie. This is Session 12, Part 2, Other Uses for Subqueries. In this video, we'll look at another use of subqueries that you might find useful. In most cases, you can use one of the join types in place of a subquery. But in the example shown in this video, you'll see that a join by itself does not provide the same results as using a subquery. We'll look at how a subquery can be used as a data source. We'll start by looking at the intended results and then work backward to show how the subquery was developed. What we want to end up with is a list of all countries and their official languages. If a country does not have an official language, we want the country name to appear in the list with an indication that there is no official language. An example of the result that we want is shown on the left side of this slide. This shows the countries listed by their country name. The official language for the country is shown. Note that some of the countries have more than one official language. Now look at Angola. It is shown with 3 asterisk characters to indicate that it does not have an official language. We can confirm that by looking at the query shown on the right side of this slide. This is a simple select statement on the country language table for the country code value AGO. The isOfficial column shows the value F, or false, for all of the languages that are listed for Angola. So when the query is run that produces the results shown on the left, it does not find an official language for Angola. It indicates that there is no official language by substituting the 3 asterisk characters. At first glance, it seems like this should be an easy problem to solve. We know that we can join the country table with the country language table. If we include a where clause to include only the official languages, we will exclude all of the unofficial languages. Using the left join shown here, we get a list of all the countries and their official languages. We are still accommodating those countries that have more than one official language. The problem is we have excluded countries that do not have any official languages. Notice that Angola is not in this list, as it was on the previous slide. If the requirement is to produce a list of all the countries with their official languages and notate a country that does not have an official language, this select statement fails. It only solves half of the problem. It does not include the countries that do not have an official language. You might think that a different type of join might work, for example, an inner join or a right join, but those types of joins also do not include the countries with no official language. So let's change the select statement so that it uses a subquery. When we do that, we get the results shown here. We now have a list of countries and their official languages. Included in the list are the countries that do not have an official language indicated by the 3 asterisk characters. I'll show you an enlarged version of these statements on the next slide, where I'll describe the statements in more detail. For now, note that 2 sections of this select are the same as the select that was used with the left join. The parts that are the same are indicated by the blue brackets. The new section of code is indicated by the red bracket. Here is the select statement that gets the results that we want. The inner select, which is the subquery, is pretty easy to understand. We'll take a look at it on the next slide. Notice that we are using a left join here. The question is, why does the left join, when used with the subquery, produce the results? When we used the left join without the subquery, we got the countries with an official language, but we did not get countries that do not have an official language. We'll come back to this in a bit and figure out why the left join works when used with the subquery and why it does not work without the subquery. This is the subquery extracted out of the complete query. When you look at this select by itself and run it, it is easy to understand how it works. It's just going to the country language table and selecting all of the rows where the isOfficial column is T or true. Note that we are returning 3 columns in the select list: the country code, the language, and the isOfficial column. Now, one thing that you should notice about this select is that it would be easy to turn this into a view. All we would need to do is to put the create view DDL statement before the select statement. Recall that a view is an object that is saved in the database. It is essentially a saved query. So let's say that we did create a view using the subquery select as shown on the previous slide. If we had the view, we could write a select statement like the one shown on the left side of this slide. Here, the left join is to our view, the official language view. Note that we are assigning an alias name of language for the official language view. Keep in mind, our official language view only includes rows where the isOfficial value is true, so it contains the country code, the language name, and the isOfficial value. When we use the left join to join the view to the country table, using the country code, we get the official languages where there is a match between the code in the country table and the country code in the view. Using a left join, what happens when we have a country code value in the country table that does not have any matching row in the view? With a left join, we retain the value in the country table and we get a null value for the missing value from the view. That is, we get all of the rows in the country table whether or not the country has an official language value. So this technique gives us a complete solution. We get all the countries. If a country has one or more official languages, we get those languages. If a country does not have an official language, we get the country name and the 3 asterisk indicator. Now, in fact, we are not using a view. We are instead using the subquery that is pointed to by the red arrow. But as I've described, you can consider the results of the subquery to be equivalent of using a view. The difference is that we never actually created the view as an object in the database. As used here, this is a temporary view. When used like this, a subquery is similar to an anonymous function in some programming languages. Should we have created a view rather than used the subquery? Maybe, maybe not. As you can see, the code on the left is quite a bit easier to understand and work with than the code on the right. As you saw in the previous slide, the select statement to select the official languages is trivial, and it would be hardly any effort to create the view. But if you only ever need the results for this one query, in other words, if you don't foresee needing to use the view in any other place in your database, it might be easier to just code the subquery. The advantage of the subquery is that all of the code for the query is in one place. If you had used a view in place of the subquery, you might need to review the code in the view to be sure it would be correct for use in this query. Before leaving this topic of using a subquery as a data source, let's go back and look at why our original select using the left join did not work. This slide shows the original query that we tried. It is using a left join on the country table and the country language table. The join is performed on the code value in the country table and the country code value in the country language table. We are using a where clause to select only the country language rows where the isOfficial value is T or true. So again, it all works, except that it does not show any countries that does not have an official language. Now here's the same select statement with the same left join. The difference is, this time the where clause is commented out. Because we are no longer selecting rows based on the isOfficial value, we get all the languages for all of the countries. Using this select and left join, you can see that Angola is on the list. All the languages have an isOfficial value of F or false. The reason for reviewing this query and its results is to help you visualize what happens when the where clause is put back in the same as it was on the previous slide. When the where clause is in effect, all of the rows with a value of F for isOfficial are excluded from the result set. Essentially, the left join is performed first, then the where clause filters out rows that should not be in the result set. So when you use the left join as shown on this slide with the where clause, you end up dropping the countries that do not have any official language. In contrast, when we used the subquery, the filtering was performed first within the subquery. Think back to how using the subquery is like using a view. The view was set up to only return countries that have an official language. That was the point at which the filtering occurred, when the subquery or anonymous view was run. After the filtering was done, the left join was applied between the country table and the subquery results. Again, because of the way a left join works, rows in the country table that did not have a match in the subquery results were assigned a null value for the official language. Rather than just show null in the result grid, we use the coalesce function to provide the 3 asterisk indicator. So when using a left join with no subquery and using the where clause, the left join is performed first, then the result set is filtered by the where clause. With a subquery that has a where clause, and using the results of the subquery with a left join, the subquery selects and filters rows. That result set is then used with the left join. Rows that do not match have null values assigned in place of the language. In the next video, we'll look at the union operator and how it is used.